Good morning, dear students. Today in 12th, we will do reading of the chapter The Interview Part 2nd. Part 1st we have already read, in which we got to know what is an interview, what some great celebrities like Kipling, Rudyard Kipling, Naipaul, H.G. Wells, and some other great poets or the reporter of the world, they think about interview. Now, part second uh, is a natural or practical example. So let's have a reading of this part. I'm a professor who writes novels on Sundays. Umberto Eco. This is one quotation written by Umberto Eco, a professor, basically. Then the following is an extract from an interview of Umberto Eco. The interview is Mukund Padmavan. Who was Mukund Padmavan? From the Hindu, the editor of the Hindu. Umberto Eco, a professor at the University of Bologna in Italy, had already acquired a formidable reputation as a scholar for his ideas on semiotics. What is semiotics? The study of science. Okay. Being a professor, he had studied his ideas on semiotics. It means the science of the study of science, literary interpretation, and medieval aesthetic before he turns to writing fiction. Okay, before uh, his writing fiction, he has mined up his scholarship on literary interpretation, semiotic, and medieval aesthetic. Literary fiction, academic text, essays, children books, newspaper articles, his written output is staggeringly large and wide ranging. It means being a professor, he is not stuck with his teaching only, even though he has written some academic text, some essays, some children books, and of course some fictions. In 1980, he acquired the equivalent of intellectual superstardom with the publication of The Name of the Rose. This was the name of the book which was so famous, written by this professor Umberto Eco, which sold more than 10 million copies. More than 10 million copies, you can say. This book had been a bestseller of its time. Now, first question put by Mukund from the Hindu. The English novelist and academic David Lodge once remarked, I can't understand how one man can do all the things he does. It means on the great work of Umberto Eco, David Lodge comments that I cannot understand how one man can do all these works that Umberto Eco does. Okay, then Umberto Eco says, maybe I give the impression of doing many things, but in the end I am convinced I am always doing the same thing. Same thing means he is bound with his schedule actually. Okay, Mukund, what is the same thing? Umberto Eco says, now that is more difficult to explain. I have some philosophical interest and I pursue them through my academic work. Means he has some kind of philosophical approach in his mindset, in his thinking, in his thought process that he follows in academic works and my novels that he writes in his novel and in his teaching. Even my books for children are about non-violence and peace. Very good subject he focuses over there. The books that he has written for children, the subject matter of the books are non-violence and peace. You see the same bunch of ethical philosophical interest. It means this is philosophical interest, this is non-violence and peace that he writes in his children book. Next, and then I have a secret. What is the secret? Did you know what will happen if you eliminate the empty space from the universe? Now he put a question before Mukund. Mukund, do you know if we remove the empty space of the world, what will happen to us? Then eliminate the empty space in all the atoms. He's a professor of science, that's why he talks about atoms. The universe will become as big as my fist. So according to Umberto Eco, if we remove the extra space of the world, extra space from the atom, extra space from the universe, the whole world will be like as big as Umberto Eco's fist. Okay, it means it will be very little more. Okay. Then similarly, we have a lot of empty spaces in our lives. We need to remove them. I call them intrinsics. Okay, extra things. Say you are coming over to my place. You are in an elevator. Elevator means lift that we use. And while you are coming up, I am writing for you. This is an intrinsic and empty space. So here he gives if you want to meet me and I am on the next story, and if you take lift to come to me, within that time I can write something for you. It is what? It is intrinsic. I work in empty spaces while waiting for your elevator to come up from the first to the third floor. Means if he wants to meet somebody who will come from first to third floor, I have already written an article. During that time, dear children, you can assume that how many minutes it takes from first floor to third floor. Hardly 10 minutes, hardly 5 minutes. Within that minutes, Umberto Eco could write an article for the visitor, and he laughs over there. This is what? This is to remove the place or free place from the world. Then Mukund, not everyone can do that, of course. You are non-fictional writing. Your scholarly work has a certain playful and personal qualities about it. Means Mukund says no, nobody can do this because you focus on your personal quality and playfulness. Then it is a marked departure from a regular academic style, which is invariably depersonalized and often dry and boring. Means nobody can follow this particular pattern because it is somehow makes your life dry, boring, and obviously depersonalized. Okay, then have you consciously adopted an informal approach, or is it something that just came natural to you? So Mukund asked this question: is this habit natural to you, or you have an informal approach to develop such kind of habit in you? Then Umberto says, when I presented my first doctoral dissertation means project presentation, okay, that we do while doing mastery in any subject in Italy, one of the professors said, now he explains one incident of his life during his college time. So one of the professors said, scholars learn a lot of a certain subject, then they make a lot of false hypotheses, which then they correct them, and at the end they put the conclusions. What is the normal scenario of presenting dissertation. Scholars learn from a different subject books, they present them and they put together, and thereafter they come to conclusion. But in the case of Umberto Eco, it is something different. You, on the contrary, told the story of your research. He told the story of his research, even including your trials and with errors also. At the same time, he recognized I was right and went on to publish my dissertation as a book, which means he appreciated it. And later, the same professor appreciated him on his presentation of his hypothesis or dissertation, and later he published a book on his subject. Then, at that point, at the age of 22, I understood scholarly books should be written the way I had done. Means, at the age of 22, he understood the real meaning of writing books by telling the story of the research. He came to conclusion, and what about the conclusion? To tell the story of a certain research. This is why my essays always have a narrative aspect, and this is the good thing of his essay, that he has a narrative approach. And this is why probably I started writing narratives novels so late, at the age of 50, more or less. Means late part of his life he understood that what is the best way to write a book, and it was his narrative approach, that narrative aspect. That's why at the age of 50 he was able to write his book. Then I remember that my dear friend Ronald Barthes, his friend, was always frustrated that he was an essayist and not a novelist. His friend was an essayist, not a novelist. He wanted to do creative writing one day or another day, but he died before he could do so. Okay, he could not write novel. I never felt this kind of frustration. I started writing novels by accident. Unfortunately, coincidentally, he started writing novel, even though he does not belong to any literary club, fine, writing club or authors club. Basically, he's a professor, and that's why at the age of 50 he started writing. I had nothing to do one day, and so I started. Novel probably satisfied my taste for narration, because novel, they are long piece of writing. That's why his narrative approach needed more pages or more explanation. That's why he was able to write novels. Then Mukund, talking about novels, from being a famous academic, you went on to becoming spectacularly famous after the publication of The Name of the Rose. You have written 5 novels against many more scholarly works of non-fiction, at least more than 20 of them. Now the question is, you have written 5 novels, and out of them, all these 20 novels, this one book was the famous book, obviously, The Name of the Rose. So what makes you spectacular about writing novel? Now, over 40, means not 20 but over 40 novels he has written. Mukund, over 40, among them a seminal piece of work on semiotics. Semiotic means a study of science, but ask most people about Umberto Eco and they will say, oh, he is the novelist. Does that bother you? Means mostly people knows him by the name of novelist, because he has written more than 40 novels, and at the age of 50 he got to write the novels, and basically he's a professor, but still people know him by the name of novelist. Now Umberto, yes, because I consider myself a university professor who writes novel on Sundays. On which day he writes novel? Sundays. It's not a joke. I participate in academic conferences and not meeting of pen club. Pen club and writers means any writing club or literary club. He just participate in academic conferences. I identify myself with the academic community, not with the authors or writers or poets community. But okay, if they most people have read only the novels, I know that by writing novels I reach a larger audience. I cannot expect to have 1 million readers with stuff on Semitic. Means he thanks God for giving him such talent, because with the stuff of semiotic, with the study of science, nobody could understand and nobody could reach on 1 million readers. It was because of his writing novels. Mukund, which brings me to my next question. The Name of the Rose is a very serious novel. It is a detective yarn of one level, but it also delves into metaphysics, theology, and medieval history. Dear children, these are the subject of this book. First one, metaphysics; second one, theology; and fourth one, medieval history. In this book, he touches these three different parts. Yet, it enjoyed a huge mass audience, a great audience. Were you puzzled at all by this? Now the question is, were you puzzled with metaphysics, theology, and medieval history? Now the question answer is no. Journalists are puzzled, and he is not a journalist, and sometimes publishers, and this is because journalists and publishers believe that people are like dustbin trash and don't like difficult reading experiences. This is the belief of some journalists and publishers. Consider there are 6 million people in this planet. The Name of the Rose sold between 10 and 15 million copies. Total population is 6 million. For example, suppose 6 million and copies are 10 to 15 million copies. So in a way, I reached only a small percentile of readers. At least he is able to reach at some percentile of readers, but it is exactly these kinds of readers who don't want easy experiences. Means it seems that the readers of my book, they do not want to have simple approach of reading, hard one you can say, or at least don't always want this. I myself at 9 p.m. after dinner, now he tells his routine over there, daily after 9 p.m. after taking his dinner, watch television and want to see either Miami Voice or Emergency Room. These are the two serial. I enjoy it and I need it, but not all day. See, these Miami Voice and Emergency Room, they are the comedy, or you can say the cartoon episode, which gives pleasure to the Professor Umberto Eco after taking dinner. But he watched them randomly, not always. Now, last question of Mukund. Could the huge success of the novel have anything to do with the fact that it dealt with the period of medieval history? That means, do you really think that medieval history has been described in this book, The Name of the Rose? That's possible, but let me tell you another story, because I often tell stories like a Chinese wise man. Dear children, dear students, we should not forget that Umberto Eco has a narrative approach. So he tells story like Chinese wise man. My American publisher said while she loved my book, means she was a female, this one, she loved my book, she didn't expect to sell more than 3,000 copies in a country where nobody has been a cathedral or studies Latin. Means she does not want to sell more than 3,000 copies where there is no cathedral and there is no Latin language, because this book was written in which language? Latin language. So I was given an advance for 3,000 copies, but in the end it sold 2 or 3 million in the USA. But it was not completed. It crossed this number, okay, and it reached to 2 or 3 million. A lot of books have been written about the medieval past far before time. Many books they have written on this medieval history. I think the success of the book is a mystery. It is a secret mystery. Nobody can predict it. What could be the mystery? I think If I had written the name of the rose 10 years earlier, at the age of 50, he wrote that book. If I had written this book 10 years earlier, or 10 years later, or at the age of 40 or at the age of 60, it would not have been the same. Means the famousness of the book had not been the same. Why it worked at that time is a mystery. Why it became so famous, it still is a mystery. Okay, dear children, I hope you have understood the part 2 and read it and try to understand. I'll post answers of this chapter today only. Thank you. Have a good day.